I'm going to sit back here.
I want to thank you so much for being here this evening to share this important time with us. I certainly want to thank Green Valley Baptist Church. This is a second occasion that they've shared the worship center with us to allow us to come, and I just appreciate the congregation here at Green Valley allowing us to do that. I'm also going to respect their time in that they have some of their people with us in the building, and at our last meeting, they flickered the lights a few times on us, and it had been a long day. And so out of all respect for all of you in your busy day and evening, and also knowing that we are gracious for the use of this church, we want to be respectful of the time frame that we've set for this meeting, and that is to start at 6 and to end at 8. And so we'll give you notice about, can you be my timekeeper, maybe about 10 minutes of 8. We'll just remind people so that anyone that might quickly want to get in line can certainly be heard. I would like to recognize our board members. We have a number of our board members here. The chair of our board, Derek Murphy, is here at front. I do see Earl Cooper, who's here with us. Stephen Presley, who's the vice chair of our board. I do know that we have 2 board members who could not be here. Jill Gaines Beach has a child headed to the high school and had a commitment this evening at Hoover High School. And we have one board member, Craig Kelly, who's traveling and wanted to be with us but could not, both of them. I want to recognize the people who are at the table with me, and the reason that they're here with me is that we've collaborated extensively through this process, and many of them have taken different parts and pieces of the work to support us, and so they're here to support us in answering any questions or taking good notes. In terms of answering your questions, we'll answer those questions that we can, but we may say to you tonight, we're going to take that down as a note, we'll study it further, we'll look at any additional data and research and certainly respond to you. But Assistant Superintendent Melody Green to my far left, Kathy Ante, who's our CSFO, is also here to my far right, Ron Dotson, Assistant Superintendent Mary Gill, who's Human Resources. And I've asked Dr. Deborah Smith. Deborah, would you stand, Dr. Smith, if she would stand? Dr. Smith is on our staff, and she works extensively with our federal programs, and we've had a number of questions posed to us about how are we going to support some of our higher poverty schools, and so really felt like Dr. Smith would be a valuable asset to have with us tonight, so thank you for doing that. I also want to acknowledge Don Sweeney, Mr. Sweeney, school board attorney, who's present with us. And then we have some of our councilmen who are with us, and I'd like to acknowledge them. We have Councilman Joe Reeves, who's with us. Do you all mind standing and letting folks see you? We have Admiral John Natter, who's with us, and John Lyda, who's with us. And did I miss any of our other councilmen who are present? We're grateful for their interest and being present with us this evening also. Tonight is an opportunity for our Green Valley, Bluff Park, and Simmons Middle Schools families to get to the microphone to share with us any questions or concerns. That does not mean that others of you who represent schools outside of those cannot have the microphone this evening, but I do want us to defer to this community as this meeting has been set specifically to give them a voice, but certainly all of us have an opportunity to share. I would say if you've already had an opportunity to share at a community meeting or both community meetings, please allow us to hear from others who have not, and certainly we'll respect the fact as we have time for you to share again. I would also like to ask tonight if someone comes to the microphone and shares something that maybe you are going to share, and we are taking notes, and we're sharing those notes with the Department of Justice and Legal Defense Fund, that it's not necessary for you to come and repeat that unless you just need to or have to or want to. You might just come to the microphone, and since we're in God's house, just say amen to what my neighbor or someone said, and we'll certainly accept that as your endorsement of some comments rather than feeling some need to repeat that. I want to talk just a minute about some things that have already happened as a result of our community's input. And the things are, one, we have a meeting tonight, and Hoover High School also has a meeting tonight. And because of that, some of our constituents in this community were unable to be here, as I shared with you, even one of our board members. So because of that, we've added an additional meeting in our community here, which will be open to any individuals in our school district. But there is a meeting on Monday evening at Gwen. It is an added meeting so that we make sure that everyone does have a voice in this process. So we've added that based on feedback that came from our community. In addition to that, today we have made our survey, translated that survey into Spanish for our families that predominantly speak Spanish in the home. We also, should we need it this evening, have a Spanish interpreter, I believe, who's with us. So if we need that, if you'll advise, we'll make that happen. And we also, after the very first unveiling of the plan, which I believe now would be 2 weeks ago this evening, I had a parent who immediately walked up to me and said, what about children in the first grade who will only be at a school for just 1 year? Could those children be grandfathered? Because we had talked about grandfathering fourth grade children who just had 1 year in a school and seventh grade children who just had 1 year in a school. And she asked about first grade, and obviously that is something that we're also going to allow. I want you to know that we're reviewing every concern. We have spent countless hours reading your emails. And by the way, if you've sent one directly to me and I've not responded, I have volumes and volumes of emails coming to me. And so to the best of my ability, I'm thanking you and trying to respond in some way. If I've not done that, it does not mean that I'm not interested, I'm not concerned, and I'm not reading those, but it has been very extensive. But we are reading your comments, we're reading your emails, we're looking at our survey data. We are going out and we're driving routes, we're looking at maps, and we're having conversations about the things that you're sharing with us. We are immediately drafting notes after every community meeting, which we did after our Tuesday night meeting, and we're sharing those notes with the Department of Justice and with the Legal Defense Fund, so that they know in as real time as possible what we're hearing from our community, and we're not picking and choosing what we're sharing with them. We're trying to take really copious, appropriate notes and making sure that those are shared with our community. We're looking at all of your suggestions as, if you will, my senior staff, looking at all of your suggestions and giving serious thought and consideration to what if we were to be able to do what a community is asking us to do, and how might that impact the plan at large. So I want you to know we're looking at it. We spent a good bit of time, I guess the better part of our morning today, talking about the what ifs we could address and include some of your suggestions. How might we take the proposed plan and minimize some of the effect on us? So please don't translate that into Dr. Murphy just promised to change the whole plan. What I'm saying to you is that we're listening, we're looking, we're being thoughtful, we're driving the routes, we're looking at how we might implement the conversations that are coming to us into making a better plan. We have also gone out to our multifamily dwellings, and we've shared with all of our apartment complexes the proposed plan. So just in the event we have individuals who've not been able to come to us, we've sent people out to talk to the management in those complexes. We've taken maps out to the complexes. So let me say this about maps. We have a number of people who've been extremely concerned about the maps we've used. And what I would say to you at this juncture is this. that even though the GIS, Geographic Information System mapping process, may not have every street or every subdivision, every cul-de-sac on the map, the GIS system is such that it doesn't care what the name of the street is. So whatever polygon or area we pick up, because GIS is feeding directly from our information system, our profile system from our students, that system knows how many children are in that area, regardless of the name of the street, and what the racial composition of, and nationalities, ethnicities of those children are. So I know there have been some concerns about mapping. I want to thank the city who's voted this week to allow us to use the city's geographic information system so that we'll have every one of those streets and every one of those subdivisions clearly articulated on some upcoming maps. So I want to thank the city for that. I also will share with you that there is a timeline that has been frequently asked about in these meetings, and let me share that with you. We added, as I mentioned a minute ago, the Monday evening meeting, which is February the 22nd at 6 o'clock, the meeting at Gwen. On Tuesday night, we will, which is the 23rd at 6 o'clock, we'll be at Spain Park High School Auditorium. On Wednesday the 24th at 10 o'clock at the central office from 10 to 12, we have smaller groups selected by parents, selected by our principals to come to the table to meet with the senior leadership team here to talk to us about questions or concerns or attaboys or whatever we can get. We're looking forward to sitting down with that group. However, we have chosen not to get into other smaller groups of 4 or 5 people or 6 or 7 people. We've come out to our community or went out to our community, to you in the fall. We spent December and January meeting with the Legal Defense Fund and the Department of Justice. We've come back out to you to say, here's a plan that at least in concept met the needs of the parties at the table in terms of being able to come out and share with you a document to allow you to begin to help us look at more closely. So on Thursday the 25th, the Legal Defense Fund and the Department of Justice will be back in Hoover, and we will talk with them about your input. However, that will not be the first time they've heard your input, because we're in constant communication. Mr. Sweeney's in constant communication. We're uploading and sharing with them the conversations that's coming to us. On Wednesday, March the 2nd, the Department of Justice and the Legal Defense Fund will come back to us again to look at a revised, should that be what we're able to do, come back and look with us at a revised plan. So when they come on the 25th, it's to see how we might take GIS and recapture and relook at what are the possibilities, and then hopefully then to come back to the table with them on March the 7th so that, on March the 2nd in hopes that we can have a plan that meets the satisfaction of all 3 of the parties. When I talk about the parties, obviously we're a party, but the other 2 parties are the Legal Defense Fund and the Department of Justice. On or about, not later than March the 7th, assuming we're able to reach consensus with the other 2 parties, I will ask our board to take a very careful review of that plan and ask for them to either vote for or against that plan. So many have been curious about and interested in what does that rezoning timeline look like for us. We have some information just quickly we want to share with you from the slide. One of the things that we do in our school district is called positive behavior supports. How do we support our children in making sure that they're conducting themselves fairly and appropriately and that they're playing by appropriate rules? And the positive behavior support ground rules for our students are the same ground rules I want to share with us tonight. And that is that it's so important for us to be respectful. I realize that all of us in this room are coming from a different venue, a different perspective, from a different street, from a different community where the conversations are going on. And I'm just going to ask that we treat each other with respect. And I don't know any other way to do that. And I know that that's how Hoover conducts itself. And so I'm going to ask that we be respectful of each other. And you may ask us questions, and we may simply say, we want to take a note of that, we want to study that a little bit more, but we're certainly here to hear you share with us. And so I also want to remind you, because I've gone around the room and spoken to several of our students, we have children in the house. And so we want to demonstrate what disagreeing can look like while we're disagreeing agreeably. So that respect is so important. I want us to be responsible. You know, we've walked in, I hope we've walked in as family and as friends and as neighbors, and it's not us versus you. We aren't on a different page trying to struggle and fight and arm wrestle with you. We're trying to find the very best plan we can for all of our children. And so I'm so happy again that you've come to share your thoughts with us. Being resourceful also means please come to the microphone and please answer the questions that's on the yellow sheet, and it basically says what's your name and where do you live and are you a citizen or a parent, and it just gives us a snapshot of who you are so we can sort of see the position from which you are sharing. We want to be safe. This should be a safe room tonight. First of all, we're in God's house. But second of all, this should be a safe place where we can just, again, agree to disagree, but be very safe. We should be able to express ourselves and say the things that we need to say in a most respectful way. So this is a safe place to share your position and to share what your concerns are and to share what you believe the challenges of this plan are for you. Okay? I want to remind you that there are parties to this, and so we'll show you those parties that are involved in this process, I think. No? So let me tell you who the parties are in this process. See how good I'm at remembering things. You are a party to this process. And you are here to be heard and to share and to listen. And so you, our community, is very important to us. In addition to that, our employees are stakeholders in this process, and many of them are in the room. And by the way, not all of them necessarily agree that this is a brilliant plan. So they have thoughts and concerns, and they're sharing those with us. We have the Department of Justice who's at the table with us. And we also have Legal Defense Fund, who's at the table with us. This school district is under a desegregation court order. And you're right, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about this thing dates us all the way back to 1965. There was a, yes sir?
Judge U.W. Clement, who's representing the Legal Defense Fund, just
thank you. Judge Clements, thank you so much for being with us. He's been able to attend, I think, most of our meetings, so thank you for that. We're under, as a school district, a desegregation court order. And so we have certain obligations to get the expectations of the court met. So I've given this analogy. And again, it may not be so brilliant either, but in my terms, it makes sense to me. Here's what we have going on. We're at the house, and we want ice cream. And I really want orange sherbet ice cream. And another family member wants lime sherbet ice cream, and another wants pineapple sherbet ice cream. We're not going to the grocery store and buy 3 half-gallons of sherbet ice cream. So we meet. We confer, and we decide, okay, we're not going to be able to all go get the exact ice cream we wanted, but what ice cream can we all eat? What's palatable? What can we accept? And compromise is a lot like that. We are in a position where there are 3 stakeholders at the table, and it has been a very cooperative and a very collaborative, a very positive experience, and I'm pleased with that relationship that we have with the other 2 parties, and we have a vested interest, and we want to stay at that table, and we want to make the very best decisions we can for our children. Oh, yay. Thank you, we have it now. I just want to share with you quickly, about 2,500 students under the current plan are being impacted. That's about 18% of our student population. More of our elementary children are being impacted than middle school and secondary. Of that 2,500, about 68% of those children are elementary, about 18% of those children being middle, and 14% of those children being high school students. There is no disproportionate impact on white students versus our black students or other ethnicities. Our black students, about 47% of that 2,500 are black students being impacted by this move, and about 45% of that number being white students, and 8% of other nationalities and ethnicities are being impacted. You all have shared some really good stuff with us already, and I want you to know that we've heard you. And so quickly, if we can just tell you what we know you're passionate about, and that is, when we look at the Bluff Park Elementary School, Simmons Middle School to Hoover High School feeder pattern, Crest Cove and Stonebrook are now zoned to Gwynn, and Page and O'Neill Drive are zoned to Green Valley. And we know you have some concerns about that. When we look at the Gwynn Elementary School to Simmons and Hoover High School feeder, we know that the Preserve has shared concerns, that Magnolia Grove has concerns, as does Highland Crest and Pinewood. Those have been zoned to go to Trace Crossings. At the River Chase Elementary School, the Berry Middle School Spain Park feeder pattern, Quail Run and South Lake, now zoned to go to Rocky Ridge, have expressed concerns. Chase Lake, Barrington-on-Green, Waterford, and Summer Chase, all going to Trace Crossings Elementary School. And I know that's a big and underlined for many of you, and that's a change to the Simmons Middle School and Hoover High School feeder pattern. That is the only one in this proposed plan, and I don't say only one as in it's minuscule, because I know for those who are impacted by this is important to us. And then Rocky Ridge Elementary School to Berry Middle School to Spain Park feeder, Huntington Trailway and River Oaks now zoned to go to Green Valley, have some concerns. Trace Crossings Elementary School, the Bumpus Simmons Middle School, Hoover High School feeder, Scout Creek, Lake Trace, Creekside, Chestnut Bridge, and North Bridge now being zoned to go to South Shades Crest and to Brock's Gap Intermediate School, or Brock's Gap. There are concerns that we've heard. There are some general concerns that you have shared with us, and one has to do with the increasing poverty at some of our schools. Now, here's a good place for me to also talk about data, because we've had people who've said to us, well, that's not the data you showed us last week or at the first of the month or when we started this process. And here's what I want you to understand about the data. It is changing. We're trying to stay on top of the data as it shifts and as it moves. We're cross-referencing our data to make sure that we're using right data, appropriate data. And so I don't want you to feel disgruntled about the fact that you may see the data change. We're not doing anything hokey with it, I promise you. But as data changes, as research and investigation changes, and let me give you an example of what that means. In one of our schools, we knew exactly the number of free and reduced lunch children in that school. Except for when we pulled the data from the registrar did not have 10 of those children noted as free and reduced lunch. So when you go and pull that from the registrar, it's different than if you pulled it from C&P. So thus we started cross-referencing our data to ensure that we had not missed things like that. And by the way, 10 children on free or reduced lunch can certainly impact what those percentages look like. One thing that I back up just one more time, if you would. There are some other things from our meetings that you've shared with us that you're concerned about in general. You have concerns about traffic issues. You have some concerns you've expressed about what's the impact of us or for us in terms of our property values. Many of you have expressed concerns about the strength of your parent-teacher organization and the leadership of your parent organization. And now what? Because we're being split up and will not be there. Many of you have talked to us about being concerned about pre-planned communities that were designed to be all-inclusive. Our doctor's there, our dentist is there, our church is there, our grocery store is there, and you're concerned about the division that's occurring there. So there are other general concerns that we know also in addition to your concern about increasing poverty. But to jump back to poverty, I show you this. You can go to Google and pull this, and here's something that we have to bear in mind. Even though when we look at our school district right now, and we could say, well, if Hoover City Schools is 23 to 25% black population, when you go and look at some of our schools, we're there. So what are you doing? And why are you doing this? However, the way we did that is not acceptable to the court. It was when we did it. We didn't do anything illegal or violate any expectation. But what we were doing is we were picking students up, generally picking them up from a multi-family dwelling. In many cases, those students were black, and we were dispersing those students then throughout the school district to create the diversity. So we're hearing people say, why are you trying to fix something that has a remedy? The problem is the way, isn't that good Southern talk? The way we fixed it was not acceptable to the court. And it isn't acceptable to the court that we go and lift children and disperse them around our school district, but instead that we're as thoughtful as we can be about all children being able to be as close to their home as they can. Now, again, I know what you're thinking. Well, that ain't true for my kid. And I'm sure you'll come to the microphone and share that concern with us. And I just can't wait. But I share that with you. Back up one more time, I'm sorry. I share that with you to say, if you look at where our multi-family dwellings are in our city, they are in this corridor. So if indeed we're trying to keep those students closest to their home, closest to the school nearest their home, then we're going to have schools such as Gwynn and such as Green Valley and Simmons carrying a good percentage of that burden as it relates to, and I say burden not as a negative, but we do know that sometimes if we have children in poverty, because that was the concern that many are expressing, we do know that sometimes children in poverty can be more challenging for us in terms of educating them. And that we've got to find the resources and the support. Thus, Dr. Smith is here to talk to us if she needs to about how we're going to make sure that we support our schools that may have a higher percentage of poverty in them. Okay? Some ideas we've considered. I just want to share with you there have been some interesting things that's been on the table. And I've said this every community meeting. There were some conversations about what if we close a school? Or what if we close a couple of schools? We had some conversations on January the 28th when we got into the room with the other two parties. There was a conversation about taking Simmons School and splitting that school at the 8th grade, rising to be 9th graders, and sending those students to two different feeder patterns then. Sending some of those students to Hoover High School, but sending some of those students over to Spain Park. Mr. Sweeney, I think I said to the group, we've got to figure this out. Because one of the things that we heard very clearly from our community is please allow our students to stay in the high school feeder pattern. And again, I know that there is one where Trace Crossing students get split. They do stay in the high school feeder pattern though. So again, not to say that makes it acceptable, but that is something that makes that different. We've heard people talk about delaying this until 2017-18. I don't speak for the court, but I don't know that that's an option for us. Because here's the fact of the matter. If there's a better way for us to do our business in Hoover, later is not better than sooner. And the other thought of that is, as painful as this is, and I get it, I'm owning the pain that we have right now, but I don't believe that's going to be lessened by holding out a whole other year and going through this process for another year. So can we find a plan that makes our community, makes this more palatable to our community? At the same time, we're meeting the obligations of the court. I'm very hopeful when we come to the table, those 2 dates that I shared with you, that we're going to be able to take your ideas and come up with a plan that makes this a better plan for all of us. Okay? If you have questions about grandfathering, we're going to jump to this slide to talk to you about that. If you don't, we'll move on. So when you come to the mic, if you have those questions, we'll speak to it. If you have questions about transportation, we'll be glad to talk to you about transportation. Just a couple of quick things is that while we will have some additional routes, those routes will be shorter. No child under this proposed plan would be traveling further than about 7.8 miles. Less than 8 miles to get to school. We get probably what you might be thinking, and that is, yeah, but 8 miles and traffic. And this group's going this way, and I'm going this way, and there are traffic lights, and over the mountains and through the valleys, and I do know that's a challenge, and we're not making light of that. We realize that's a challenge for us. Okay? We have had people who said to us, you shouldn't have your teachers' children in our school. They're taking up seats, they're not paying taxes, and children in Hoover are having to get bumped around because of that. And that's not why our children are, that's not why we're doing rezoning. And I want you to realize that only 1.6% of the students who are in our school district are children of employees. And I believe that because of getting their children in our school district, it makes them much more all in to the school district. And it makes them available to us in the mornings and in the afternoons when otherwise they may be trying to run quickly to Pelham or pick a place to go pick up their children. But instead, they can stay with us and do some after school, maybe even have conferences with us about our children. So I wanted to share that. Any of my folks here, anything you want us to share or say? Then I will zip it. You didn't come to hear me do all that anyway. Some of you have had to hear that now how many times. So I apologize for that, but there are other people in the building who have not heard us try to frame that up for everybody. We will open our microphones. Please look at the yellow sheet of paper and please sort of follow those directions so that we know who you are and we can take those appropriate notes. I do see that Dr. Barbara Mayer is walking in. Dr. Mayer's been in a meeting, I think, the better part of the day. And Dr. Mayer is here because we've also had questions about English language learners and what about our special needs students and those particular impacts. And we'll try not to put her on the spot, but she's such the guru. If we say, hey, Barb, come up and talk, I know she'll be able to do that. So thank you for coming in too, Dr. Mayer. Thank y'all.
Dr. Murphy, could I mention one thing?
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
You covered the issue so effectively. Judge Hackala did ask us to specifically say that neither the Department of Justice nor the Legal Defense Fund have approved any plan at this point. And, of course, our board hasn't approved any plan at this point. What you have on the board is a plan that all the parties agreed met the general criteria, which has been an acceptable methodology in multiple unitary status cases. So in concept, all of the parties were favorably disposed to the general provisions, but no plan has been adopted. The plaintiff, Department of Justice, and Legal Defense Fund both took under consideration for further study the plan that is before us. And of course, the board members are here at every meeting trying to decide what features of the plan are acceptable, what features of the plan they would like to adjust.
Thank you. And I think it's also important to add that in great measure, the reason that there is no I's dotted, T's crossed, and we've asked everybody, hey, will you sign on the dotted line, is because we wanted to come to the community. and get your thoughts and get you to share with us so that we can take your very best thinking back to the table with us, which we will do on the 25th and on the 2nd of March. Okay?
Hi, my name is Becky Keeney. I have 3 sons. The first son is a high school freshman. I have a son who is a 6th grader at Simmons. And I also have a son who will be in kindergarten at Green Valley next year. I think myself and others at Green Valley knew that many families would be coming to Green Valley, but we are shocked by the numbers that are leaving, 52% of our community. I would personally like to thank you for listening and keeping the current feeder plan for the middle school and high school. It will definitely help our family in the upcoming years. However, this is not the case for many of our Green Valley families. Many of our Green Valley families are being rezoned to different elementary schools, which will place them into different feeder schools for middle and high school. Many of my questions are regarding the contiguous zones that you have discussed in the other meetings. When looking at the maps, Green Valley had many apartment homes and neighborhoods along the Lorna Road corridor. Our school had a contiguous border of such, and we had a few of those enclaves being removed for other schools. My first question is regarding why the proposal chose to move so many of our neighborhoods coming and going from Green Valley that will cross those feeder zones, such as Montedoro, Foxwood, Chapel Hill, areas leaving that will be rezoned to elementary schools that will then feed into Berry and State Park, and then adding Huntington Trail and Way and River Oaks that will be coming to our feeder zone of Simmons and Green Valley. Since they are so close, my question is, why were those flip-flopped? When determining the contiguous zones, were street maps used or just is Area A adjacent to Area B? I ask this because under the proposal, Wood Meadows is only contiguous with Gwynn via the commercial area around the Galleria Mall. And in order for those family members to get to Gwynn, they will have to drive past Green Valley or within a block in order to get to their new school. This is also a factor with many of the homes and apartment homes that are coming from the Chase Lakes and Barrington on the green areas of town and down the Highway 150 corridor that will be rezoned to Trace Crossings, but then not onto Bumpus and instead to Simmons. My next question is, has there been any thoughts to staggering the start and end times of schools to account for families who will now have to make many different feeder schools to drop off and pick up from due to grandfathering and those sort of decisions? We'll have families that possibly will be picking up from Green Valley as well as having to get kids from Shades Mountain and Rocky Ridge now. And lastly, the proposal has in no way discussed the programs at Crossroads. What is the plan or future for this school? And as a member of the Green Valley community, I want to welcome anybody who may be zoned to Green Valley in the future. And if you have questions about our family, you are more than welcome to come to our spring fling on April 9th from 11 until 2. And the board and everybody who has looked at this. And I would like to thank you for your hard work and your patience as we have reviewed some of these questions over and over and over again, and I would like to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We've taken note of your questions, and I'll just ask anybody who wants to jump in here to do so. I certainly think you offer a good thought in terms of once the final plan is in place, what thought might we need to give to timing so that we can support and help our parents. So I think that's a great idea. We've appropriately taken note of that. As it relates to telling you what at this point will happen with Crossroads, I can tell you that we're going to serve those children whose obvious conduct and behavior are outside of our code of conduct. What that exactly looks like, We are in earnest continuing to give thought to our Crossroads program. But if you're talking in terms of the building or the program or the children,
I was talking more along the lines of through some of the PTO meetings at Simmons, and we've learned a little more about the additional families that Crossroads helps that are maybe not necessarily behavioral, but are families that are have children there that are being that Hoover High and Spain Park are just too big. It's too much, and there's some programs that are available that's just too something for them. And it's not that they have behavior problems. It's not that they have, discipline issues. I know that there is another side of that, but up until this year I was unaware of.
yes, so we have two programs at Crossroads. One is our Second Chance program, designed more specifically for our students whose conduct's not where we would appreciate it to be. And the other program that you're referring to is New Beginnings, and I can tell you that we're looking at and discussing and talking about those programs.
If I can add on to that, the Crossroads School is actually not an entity of a school like an elementary school or a middle school. It is an extension of the Hoover High School and Spain Park High School campus. So when students are there for any reason, they're still a student at Hoover High School, they're still a student at Spain Park High School.
Hey.
So glad that Dr. Peters here, because that's a good tie-in to my question. My name is Rachel Harvey. I have two girls at Gwynn Elementary, and we live in the Pinewood subdivision. First, I'd like to say how much I appreciate that Hoover City Schools are committed to inclusion and how you handle special education. My oldest daughter is 8 and has Down syndrome. She attended preschool at Trace Crossings and has been at Gwynn for 4 years. She has always been in a typical classroom with the support of her special education teacher, therapist, aides, and IEP team. It's my dream team right there, guys. Did not know y'all were going to be So we had our latest IEP meeting to plan the next 12 months for Cheska 3 hours before the rezoning maps were posted. At this meeting, we agreed she's becoming increasingly more independent and could do with less aid support. Even discussing independent carpool in the future, which is important, going to Simmons Middle School. We looked at the new maps that same night and realized we were being rezoned, and it was quite a shock for us. All our plans for increased independence don't really seem possible if she has to learn a new school, get a new IEP team, and have to start over building a support team for her at her new school that we've worked 4 years to build. I regularly tell people that everyone at Gwynn, from Dr. White to the janitors, know Cheska, and everyone in between. I heard you say last week that our kids are probably more resilient than we are. But what about those kids who aren't? There are children for whom these changes will be a huge setback. Children with intellectual disabilities like Down syndrome and children on the autism spectrum or children with anxiety disorders will most likely lose critical ground both educationally and socially that they may not be able to overcome. I'm a founding member of the Learning Program. We're a local parent-led group who works to teach parents in schools how best to educate children with Down syndrome and other visual learners. Through this work, I know firsthand how hard it is to reach parents with a language barrier who have a child with a disability. At Gwynn, I know there's a precious little girl with Down syndrome whose parents speak no English. What will the school system do to ensure that these children do not unduly suffer these setbacks? And how are parents whose children have IEPs going to be notified of their rights to work with their IEP team to ensure that their children are placed based on their needs and not the needs of the school system?
Dr. Mayer, you might want to slide on down here a little closer to us. You know, obviously, the obvious response I want to give first is that I appreciate your sharing your story, and we want to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students. And we understand individualized education planning, and we understand that through individualized education planning that there could be language in those IEPs that allow children's needs to be met at different locations. And so, Dr. Mayer, I don't know to what extent you wish to address or share anything, but I'm glad to get you up here closer.
Thank you, and I apologize for being late. I just walked out of a meeting before I got here. We will be looking, I'm still trying to figure out where the kids are going to be as well. So we will look very carefully at each of the children. And I know that Wynn has a dream team. Each of our schools has a dream team. And I know that doesn't make it easier, but every school has wonderful special ed teachers that will work with us. So I'm still trying to get my arms around who's going to be where, but we'll be looking at that carefully and working with the IEP teams as we figure out exactly what the plan's going to look like.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there's anybody that I can help as a community member of the disability community, please let me know.
Thank you, and you've been very helpful to us all along, so we appreciate that.
Thank you. We appreciate that offer.
Good evening. I'm Diane Gillum. I have 2 children at Green Valley Elementary. I live in the Lingate community. I'm not affected by the change, but I did want to address some concerns I have for Green Valley Elementary. First off, thank you for the opportunity to discuss my children's school, as well as the proposed changes. But during your previous meeting in November when we met here, you went over several things, that the reason we were contemplating the changes, and what we hoped the goal would be from those changes. And one point that was made was that, for example, Love Park had a maximum capacity at that time. You said 97.4%, optimal capacity of 108.3%. But their change is only 30 students. Greystone, which has 74%, I believe it is, they're having 0 change. And that night you said that, quote, not that we'll force an exact 84% at every school, but that was your goal, was that every school would have approximately 84% across the board, But now Blood Park's going to be at 90. Greystone is still going to be at 78. Not to pick on Blood Park, I love you guys. But I just, some schools are having such dramatic changes, and I just feel like some schools have just completely gotten away with no changes. The second point was that you said you were, quote, not interested in getting away from community schools, which we all love to hear. You also said, quote, we're not interested in picking up unplaced children and moving them out of the district. But unfortunately, that is what's happening for a lot of students. Although my children are not impacted, others are. And I feel like it really needs to be looked at again. And my third point is that, something that you did mention has been discussed several times, that Green Valley is going from a 43% poverty level to now increasing to a 48% poverty level. And I know you've heard this at 2 other meetings, but I wasn't there. So I want to discuss it a little bit more. Greystone has 6% poverty level. And not to pick on Greystone, because I love you guys too. But 6%, and yet we're getting 48%. Me and a group of other parents had already come to you and discussed the issues we were having, and one was that our children were not allowed to go on as many excursions and trips because the poverty level at our school, we were told, was just at the point where we couldn't afford, all kids couldn't afford it. Well, how is that going to be helped with this change? It's not. It's going to diminish it.
Thank you so much. If I could just get Dr. Smith, would you just talk for just a minute about Item 1, federal funds, and how that money is used to support our schools that have a higher percentage of poverty-free and reduced lunch, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot.
Good evening to everyone. You're supposed to say good evening. I am the Director of Federal Programs, and Title I is truly my passion. I have several of our Title I interventionists here tonight, and what I want to share with you is that the funds that we receive for our Title I programs, of course, will follow the students. So any students who are now transitioning to Green Valley, they will, of course, receive additional funds and support for those children. You spoke of some field trips and things of that nature. The reality is that if Mr. Singer and I and our Title I team gets together and those are things that we need to support, we can do that. I just need to be made aware of that. And so we will definitely be going through some transitions with that. We do not have school-wide Title I schools, so that means that all of the funds don't actually go to all of the students. What we have is called a targeted assistance, and those students are identified based on their academic need. So any student in the school can receive Title I support. It's not just for students who are in poverty. So still, this is a proposed plan. We don't know any of those final details, but I've already been in communication with the State Department and trying to figure out some things that I can do additionally to support students as the poverty increases at schools.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. If I could just add to that too, it is not acceptable to us as a school district that we have children, as was explained to me in an earlier meeting, who's able to go on a 2-night, 3-day trip, and other children who are at that same grade, might be the same field trip, are unable to be doing overnight. So I think working with Dr. Smith is going to be important for us. We want all of our children, regardless of where they are, to have opportunities that are like and similar to the other students in our district. Let's see, where are we? Over here?
Hi, my name is Kirsten Huff, and I live in the Preserve neighborhood, and our family has 2 children at Gwen, and our children are Hispanic. We rarely refer to our children's ethnicity or skin color because that's not how my husband and I see them. We see them as the children we love and that sometimes we only like. Since our children were babies, I have learned and been educated on some of the challenges that come with having brown skin. So in this world, just like the DOJ, Department of Justice, my role is for my children to grow up in a diverse community, not only by educating both of them, but others too, how important all skin colors are. We've lived in Hoover for many years, pre-children, and now with 2 elementary children. When our children were in preschool, we had the opportunity to move to Germany with my husband's job, and we lived there as expats. During our time in Germany, our children attended an international baccalaureate school where they were surrounded by diversity from all over the world, all demographics, all cultures, all skin colors, and it was I don't want to say outstanding experience, but it was because they learned how to be comfortable in their skin, and therefore they could learn to the maximum capacity. So without the anxiety of thinking about fitting in or who they're going to make friends with. So when the time came for us to move back to America, my husband, like probably some other husbands, put me on the plane to come back and find our home and our community over a course of a weekend. And yes, I did say weekend. For us, when I was going around with a realtor, the preserve seemed like an ideal community. Little kids were out walking their dogs, riding their bikes, playing on the playground. And then the realtor said, and not only that, but the school is walking distance from here. That to me sounded very much like the environment we had in Germany. So that sounded great to me since this was my first experience with public schools with elementary school children in America. So what seemed like an ideal community to me, I wanted to go, before I made an offer in the house, and talk to the principal of Gwynn, because I didn't know much about Gwynn. And coming from a diversified environment for our children, I wanted to make sure that Gwynn had that. So before we made an offer in the house, I asked my realtor if she could pop me up to Gwynn. I popped in without an appointment, and the realtor sat outside for probably an hour and 15 minutes while Dr. Gwynn, because she is Dr. Gwynn. Dr. White took the time to go over with me not only how Gwynn was diversified, how it had all types of demographics represented, but also all the fabulous things that they did that were comparable to what they had at International Baccalaureate School. This was critical to us before we made the offer in our house. So needless to say, I jumped right back on with the realtor and made the offer in our house. And that was the day that we were introduced as a family to what Gwynn is for us, and that we've come to know and love. With that community, it also is a community, and I haven't heard this in the other meetings so much, it's a community for our children. Not only can they walk to school, but the same children in the area that attend Gwynn, we go to church with, we play tennis, our children play tennis with, they go to karate with, they go to scouts with, because other kids that feed into Gwynn feed into these same community programs. So therefore, they have their friends who everyone in this community has been nothing more. That's the preserve, the teachers at Gwynn, the other people that live in the area surrounding us in their community events have been nothing but open arms. And I have to say, they don't look at my children as having brown, white, Hispanic, black skin. It is with this community support that our children can focus on learning and obtaining an incredible education here in Hoover to make them successful as adults that happen to be Hispanic and have brown skin. I have two questions I want to end with. I understand the Department of Justice has to represent the plaintiff in the suit, but my concern is the board going to look out for all the other colors of skin, especially the Hispanic population, to make sure that they're taken care of and communicated with through this whole transition and process. My second question is, since Gwynn's numbers are appropriate for the DOJ's numbers, then why are they taking a community that's in walking distance from the school and taking them out of Gwynn's numbers?
Thank you for sharing that with me. I'll take a shot at just making a couple of brief comments because we have lots of people who want to talk and I don't want to dominate that time. So I do want to acknowledge that all of the parties at the table, I believe I can say without exception, are concerned about all children. But very clearly, some like lime, some like lemon, some like pineapple sherbet. So again, there's different criteria, different objectives, but I just want to be really careful to make sure that I say that there's nobody at that table that's not advocating for all children. And certainly, the school district is advocating for all children, and I just want to say that. Again, I may have answered part of your question about why lift some students and move them around in terms of some of the enclaves. If you hear us talk about enclaves or satellites, what are some of those other terms? Islands. That has been a practice where we pull children out and disperse them for the purposes of creating diversity. And part of this plan is to undo that, because that's not an acceptable process for us anymore. But thank you for your questions. We've taken note of them, and I thank you for sharing your conversation with us.
Dr. Murphy?
Yes, Mr. Sweeney.
The presentations are marvelous, and the anecdotes that are being shared are so earnest and so important. But I would just point out that there are 16 people now lined up to speak with 60 minutes left, which comes out to about 3 minutes a speech or presentation of each person. So we've never imposed timelines, but out of respect to so many people who want to share something, a 3-minute timeline might be helpful.
Thank you. If you would, if you just share your concerns and your points, and if someone's already shared that, again, we said amen or ditto is a good thing to say, but if you would help us be respectful of time. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Sabrina Stevens. I live in the Chapel Creek community. My daughter is at Simmons Middle School. We moved here because we had a home in Shelby County and we sold it to be in the Hoover schools. Loved Gwen and we support Gwen completely. Went to Simmons and we were terrified because of the large number of students. And I cannot tell you how pleasantly surprised and pleased we were with Brian Kane, the entire administration there, our band program, our drama program. When you have a 13-year-old girl coming home wanting to talk about civics and science, okay, she doesn't want to talk about advanced math, but everything else she really loves it. And it's such a school with diversity. When they announced that we were not being rezoned and we are not being rezoned, I was doing a happy dance. I was thrilled. But then I started looking at the numbers that were published. And Simmons is getting an increase of 35%. Simmons is currently at about 819 students, which is well over the average middle school size in the state. We're going to increase to 1,105 students. The free and reduced lunches in that is going to take us from 27%. I think the latest slide was 37. At one time it said 40. My first part of my question is, are we funneling all of these children intentionally to Simmons to get us to Title I status?
Trying to force a Title I school is not a conversation on the table for any of the parties, no.
Okay, well, great. Because, you know, we want to keep our community schools, but with this huge of a number, it doesn't matter where they're coming from. We are going to welcome these students. I'm PTO president next year. I assure you we're going to welcome these students, but we want it to be a number that we can embrace. With 300 additional, 35% additional students, we want them all to get good education for all of our students with enrichment opportunities. Please don't take our jazz band room. Please don't take our drama room. These are rooms that are being used. We don't have empty classrooms. Whereas Bumpus, that does have empty classrooms, is only increasing by 15%, and they're adding a grade to their school. So the next part of my question is if you would just consider fairly splitting these equally between the middle schools instead of penalizing our school and enforcing those that don't want this to happen. I think another problem to address is I've spoken with some bus drivers, and at some of these complexes, we're having students that do not live in Hoover that are getting on those buses and leaving our schools. That's what it's all about.
Thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you for allowing us this time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it so much, and we know you've put a lot of effort into it, and thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your comments.
I'm gonna say amen to that. If I want to talk about something.
Okay.
My name is Kristen McCain, and I have 2 boys at Gwen. I have a 2nd grader and a 5th grader. I have lived here for over 40 years. I went to Gwen, Simmons, and Berry, my husband and I both. Our family business is down the road. You will not find a larger advocate for this city than the 2 of us. We love it here. We want to stay here. After looking at the plan and researching it for weeks, my question was, is this the best plan for all students? I feel the answer is no. One of your stated goals was to have more diverse schools throughout the city. Well, if you have not been to Gwen Elementary School, I highly suggest you go. As someone who has seen it transform into a wonderfully diverse school, please go. When compared to our city, state, and country, Gwen is modeled for diversity that should be celebrated, not dismantled. I have been on the fundraising committee for 5 years, and if this plan happens, we have a small percentage that is able to help with fundraising and PTO support. 7 out of 10 of our committee members will move to Trace Crossings. This money benefits the schools in ways that traditional funding does not. In the past 2 years, we have raised $95,000. This money has helped make improvements to the school grounds, resurfacing the track, new science lab, painting, supplementing field trip cost, and today we discussed new gym equipment. My question for you is, if this plan takes place, how does the city propose to pay for the much-needed improvement, resources, and support, as well as provide the children with an equal opportunity education?
Rephrase that question for me. How is the city?
How will this be paid? If we don't have the fundraising that's going to help pay for the improvements, where does that money come from?
Right.
As an older school, Gwen and Simmons are both older schools. I went there, I know.
Thank you. Thank you. Obviously, our school district has capital outlay funds to support our schools. So in terms of, if you're talking about the upkeep and the safety of our schools, obviously that's not something that any of us are willing to let decrease or have our schools not be taken care of appropriately. So certainly as it relates to your group, you're saying you all will be split up, there are 10 of you, 7 of you, and again, we don't have a final plan. But I would just say this as an observation, and that is, there's so many good families, so many great volunteer parents all over the place. One of the things that we've heard from Trace Crossings is we're losing all of our great parents who've helped us and are helping us fundraise. And you just indicated 7 of your 10 is headed that way. And I don't make light of how passionate we are about the schools that we're in. But I'm very hopeful that regardless of how the final plan comes out, there's so many great parents who are going to step up, regardless of which school, and help us support all of our children with great fundraising. So thank you for sharing with us. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Dr. Murphy. My name is Emilio Strisi, and I live in the Blood Park community. My wife, Christy, and I have one 7-year-old little boy currently in the 1st grade. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I have been a resident of Blood Park for about 25 years. Moving there when I was single, and getting married, having a child, and as a result of those events, in 2015, my wife and I finally decided that we needed to get a home that would better suit our needs. So, the one non-negotiable requirement in our move, in finding a new home, other than her getting more closet space, was that the home be zoned Bluff Park, because we had been there for a long time, we already had experience with it, and we wanted to stay in that area. So we then made the largest financial decision of our lives and bought a new home on O'Neill Drive. So now, 10 months later, you can imagine our dismay when we understand that it is in rezone. And this is notwithstanding any of the merits of any other school. This is more about what affects us as well as other members of our community. So that's the little personal story. Let me, because I know I've only got 3 minutes, let me address a couple of things that I want to share and ask. Actually, I think that someone else is going to hit more so on what I call the driving distance issue. So I'll leave it to them. But thank you for saying that you have been driving the neighborhoods around to get a feel for it. Can I ask, have you been able to drive the Bluff Park neighborhoods?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, great. Thank you. I think it was mentioned earlier as to the number of kids being affected in Bluff Park. The total number of kids that are what I would call subject to this rezoning is actually 27 kids. And they come from 2 or 3 different areas of Bluff Park. There's 16 of those from the Page O'Neill area, and then there are 11 children from the small neighborhoods of Crest Cove and Stromberg, as you already know that. So we've got 27 children, and unlike some other, well, I say that, let me backtrack. Those 27 kids are not being sent to the same school. Rather, they're being split to do 2 different schools. So, you know, if there was the opportunity for them to be a part of a larger neighborhood, a whole community that was being rezoned, it might not make it any more, it might make it less painful, it would still be difficult, but at least it would have some familiar faces to go along with them. But as a result of being split 16 to one school and 11 to another, you're going to have situations, because they're not all the same grade, you're going to have a child, for example, 2, I'm going to go to my cheat sheet for this one, but you've got 3 incoming first graders that are going to be asked to go by themselves to Green Valley. 3 incoming fourth graders that are going to be asked to go to Gwen. You have 2 incoming third graders that are going to be asked to move to Green Valley. And you only have 1 incoming first grader from Bluff Park that is being asked to move to Gwen. So these children, in my mind, are going to be in a situation where I know they're resilient, but they're going to be basically practically isolated from their social network, the friends they've had, the ones they've grown up with, the teacher that they've become familiar with, obviously, and asked to start over at a new school, basically by themselves, without a little buddy or 2 that they had for a decision made not of their own choosing. So, again, I think if an entire neighborhood, and I'm not asking that we take a whole neighborhood and redo this.
Careful what you ask.
Yeah, that's not what I'm asking. I want to make it clear.
Right.
But it's going to get to the question when I ask. It's such a small number of children. And again, the driving distance issue is something else, and for the second time, I won't go into that. I hope somebody else does.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, my question, let me hit on a couple other things.
Mr. Sweeney, we might have to time.
Yeah.
Because I'm seeing more and more people get in line with less and less time. If it becomes necessary, just let me know what you think.
Well, I will say this is probably, I think, the first time we've heard from Bluff Park residents. There's probably already a lot of this out there.
And in addition to I will respond that we do have an additional meeting that's scheduled on Monday, so we'll look forward to hearing those if we do run out of time. Thank you.
The changes that are being made, those 27 kids, when you look at the proposed makeup, the demographic makeup of the schools that they're going to or the one they're coming from, the numbers, percentages, whether you look at poverty levels, Hispanic, black, white, it doesn't move the needle. It's a 1% change on all 3 of those for Bluff Park. For the other schools being affected, you would look at it, and the way they're being affected is not in the way you think it would go based on adding those children. So those are the kids that are causing that change up or down. So based on that, and based on the fact that if, let's say the issue is a capacity issue, we may have the highest capacity, we'll agree with that. but somebody's got to be the top, you know. So, and I mean that by saying it's not maximum capacity. It's at a high level, and we're basing it on a picture that's being taken right now of our student makeup. And I know that you may probably be aware of this, but the current grade that is coming through, that will be 5th graders next year, is by far the largest one. After that, the grade sizes drop down. So let's say we take a picture a year from now, within our capacity level, our total enrollment is going to drop. And if we keep adding kids on the average that we've seen in the last few years, it's going to remain a good bit lower than where we are today. So, with that, and as we all know, Bluff Park is essentially a landlocked community. We don't have some new developments coming in. There is no real growth. Usually right now, the only new homes that are coming in are tear downs or an occasional landlock here and there. So all those, I want to respectfully ask this question, and I want to put you on the spot, but I really want to understand, why is Bluff Park being put into the zoning proposal? And this will be a follow-up question. What benefit is obtained by taking these children and moving them from one school to another in this small number? I think that's all I got.
Thank you for your question. We've taken note. Let me just simply say to you that I realize that you're saying this is just a handful of students here, but as we sat at the table and looked at the school district at large and tried to make sure that we were meeting all the expectations, this is the plan that we came up with, but we clearly hear that you'd like for us to revise that and rethink that. So that is certainly what we're hearing you say, and it is certainly something that we will take back to the table with us on the 25th and on the 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chris Monty. I have 4 children, 2 that currently attend Gwynn and 2 that are slated to attend Gwynn when they come of age. I have 4 questions. I understand that the student assignment plan is the first of several green factors that we need to meet in order to achieve unitary status. I'm starting to think about what's next. So, Dr. Murphy, I would like for you to please outline for us what you foresee as the sequence and timeline that is in store for us for addressing the remaining green factors.
I don't know that we could easily say it's going to happen in the next 6 months, year, 2 years. There are 6 green factors. This is a critical first, which is the student assignment or the rezoning piece. There are other green factors, which include teacher assignments, staff assignments, extracurricular activities, transportation, buildings, facilities, and I'm missing one. But those all are next steps for us. So in terms of reaching unitary status, this is one of 6 green factors. And as far as me being able to project or predict that timeline, there are other parties in this process for which I wouldn't have control over their schedules or their timing to be able to define that for you.
Is it typical for this process to be measured in months or years, based on your experience?
Would you mind if I address that?
Yes, Mr. Sweeney.
When we were discussing how to proceed in this fashion, it was the position of Hoover that 3 or 4 of the green factors were right for us to be declared partial unitary already. Facilities, everybody believes that facilities here are outstanding. But because of the complexity of student rezoning and how that affects the staffing issues, programmatic issues like poverty and so forth, in every school, the parties told us that they didn't think it was realistic to address all of those at this time. Get this out of the way, and then we'll have a better perspective on the other green factors. And it has been my experience that in Alabama with other factors that the one that takes the longest is staffing, and that typically the courts have looked at a 3-year plan to finish the staffing requirements in every school, but granting unitary status and all of the other aspects. The previous gentleman raised so many cogent, well-organized, important points, but at 8 minutes, we're running out of time for these other people that need to speak, and our lines are growing, not diminishing. I started with 16, and I think we've added to them, so I really think maybe I should stand for 3 minutes, and then people at least will know that we're getting awfully close to the limit.
Second question. In the previous meeting, there was a reference made to a number of capital improvements that need to be completed to reconfigure the schools for their new student populations. The timeline of this process has you going before the judge in April. Presumably she'll take some time to issue her order, and only then will we really have a clear sense of what's going to happen. Some of these capital improvements included changes to lunch service lines, locker rooms. I heard mention to an ingress-egress pattern for vehicles at one school. So I'm wondering, have you developed a list of these capital improvements? Do you have a budget for them? And knowing that you won't have a clear sense of what's going to happen until sometime in April or even May, when Judge Heikkila finally issues her order, are all these things really and truly going to be in place come August?
It is our full intention. We recognize the things that need to be done in terms of capital outlay projects. We are already talking about what that transition might look like. And just as soon as this is heard by Judge Heikkila and we're on go, we will have a plan ready to be implemented, and we'll be on a fast track to do that.
It strikes me as fairly ambitious, given some of the things that were mentioned, and I would just ask that you take that into consideration. Not least of which as well is that there will be families making decisions about their children's education in what is now a fairly compressed time frame. Next question. The changing student demographics is going to require faculty and staff to shift around, clearly. Faculty assignment is one of the green factors. I'm wondering, in this initial change and shift, are the plaintiffs going to have oversight over your intentions as far as teachers and administrators shifting around, and is that going to be a complicating factor?
That is a green factor, and so we will give great consideration to how we meet that green factor as we're looking at transfers, as students go, transferring teachers. So certainly it's incumbent upon us as a school district, as we have this opportunity to address the green factor specific to personnel, that we would do it in tandem with the student assignment plan.
I'll just ask you to be cognizant of Mr. Sweeney's comments a minute ago that faculty assignment is typically the most complicated of the green factors to meet and can take upwards of 3 years. Last question. In the February 2015 conference between the attorneys and Judge Heikkila, both the court and Ms. Lynn-Luce made mention of alternative student reassignment strategies like majority to minority transfers, magnet schools. Obviously, those alternate strategies aren't a part of our plan. My question to you is, were those strategies considered? When in your process were they considered, and why were they rejected? Thank you.
The parties at the table have given great thought and consideration to various strategies, and we will continue to do that in terms of any majority to minority, magnet programs, and otherwise. Those are conversations, and we'll keep those on the table. Thank you.
How you doing? My name is Kurt Mosey. I am a parent of 2 children at Bluff Park and also a graduate of the Hoover City School System when the capacity at Berry was 800%, and then we moved to a new school on that. I did not see it inside the classroom until I was a junior, but anyway. Mr. Sweeney, I have a question for you. In January of 2015, the LDF came down here and interviewed potential private claims. When you read that document he mentioned in February, you hear more about concerns from the private plaintiffs than any other entity involved. What was the vetting process for getting these private plaintiffs? Was Hoover involved? And are we considering that, you know, the DOJ in a lot of those comments say, well, I'm not concerned with this, but then the private plaintiff comes back. And most of those concerns actually point back to Andy Craig's bus plan and Andy Craig's rezoning plan, which she took off the table. And also, one other thing in there, Ms. Lindley says that if we don't have something in place by March, we might need to look at delaying a year. So, here's my questions. What was the vetting process for those private plaintiffs? Were you involved? And are you taking into consideration the fact that one of the parties in this discussion is saying that if you don't have something in place by March, you need to delay?
All of the parties have been mindful of the critical path for this plan from the beginning. LDF has joined with us in telling the court how important it is that we get to the court in early March so that we can make all of the adjustments. And I think the attribute that you've given to LDF is shared by the Department of Justice, and I can share with you that it is at the top of Dr. Kathy Murphy's critical concerns because of all of the adjustments that have to be made. We have vetted very in depth with LDF and the Department of Justice, and I think it's fair to say we're all committed to the same objective. How the details are achieved that we may differ on, but I think all three parties agree that the changes needed to be made will be made either by the parties or independently by the court. And the court does not want that to happen. The court wants the parties to find a commonality. Dr. Murphy, is that your sense too?
That is my sense too, Mr. President.
Okay, one more statement. I look at Vestavia, and Vestavia is far less diverse than Hoover, and they have unitary status, and we don't. When I graduated from high school in 1995, my senior class was 91% Caucasian. Obviously, that's not the case today. We are a diverse community. So why did they not walk in here, look at us, look at all that data, and see that we're diverse and say, like Vestavia, here's unitary status. We agree with that, or something across the line, because we don't look like we did 25 years ago. So what happened?
The objective of desegregation is to remove the vestiges of prior desegregation without disproportionately burdening any particular class. We achieved fairly satisfactory diversity in all of our schools by a methodology that disproportionately burdened black students. And our constitutional obligation is to redress that. And that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm John Lundeen. I am a resident of Birch Tree neighborhood, which is being split into two based on this proposed plan. I have two children at Gwynn and one at Simmons. Amen to everything about Gwynn, the leadership, the staff, and as a nurse myself, I need to give a shout out to Nurse Kent. I don't think she gets enough recognition. My wife's also a nurse, but and amen to Simmons, everything there. My daughter's thriving there and doing very well for middle school. In my research, I came across a 2006 paper, and it'll sound familiar. The title is Setting Boundaries, Monitoring the Effects of Closer to Home School Rezoning on Student Participation and Engagement in School. And in it, the author details her 6-year study of the Nashville school redistricting transition to unitary status. And while there are a lot of very key points in that too that are very relevant to our discussion, when schools are closer to home, there is a statistically significant increase in student participation and engagement.
meaning less absence and less disciplinary status, or events. In line with social disorganization theory, students in schools characterized by economic deprivation or higher poverty are significantly more likely to have increased absences and more disciplinary events. This is going to happen to us. Gwen is going from 29% to 40% poverty, and Simmons 27 to 37%. So this reflects this same 6-year study. And according to this author, the time frame for Nashville's process was 8 years of community involvement. One question I do have for you is, I looked at one of the table or charts on the Hoover Rezoning website. In it, it's white, black, and other. Can you describe to me who other are?
Nationalities, ethnicities outside black or white.
So, according to the data that are presented, Gwen then only has, let's see here, 17 people that do not self-identify as black or white.
One reason for that is Hispanic, in the way that the state of Alabama and the federal government now categorize race and ethnicity. Hispanic is a separate category. That would not be counted in those numbers.
Why then are we not looking at the same statistics as the U.S. Census?
It's because how you count the students, you can be any of the race. You can be a white Hispanic, you can be a black Hispanic, Pacific Island Hispanic. It can be any combination of those. So Hispanic doesn't count in a race category.
Can you summarize your most important question?
Well, I just feel that the numbers are skewed unfairly in favor of one race, and that's throwing our numbers off as far as segregation is considered. And my last amen really is to the traffic. I do hope, and I don't know if there is any formal traffic study that has been conducted. We really appreciate you driving the area, but that does not give us an accurate depiction of the number of vehicles that will be on the road. The traffic coming from 150 now through Chapel to get to Gwen, this red light is already a joke. It lets maybe 5 people through. When we increase the numbers there, I hope that someone can address the true traffic concerns with that. Thank you.
We have 18 people lined up with 22 minutes, and the curtain comes down.
Hello, my name is Dr. Edward Rucius. I prepared a 5-hour speech, but I'll make it short. My wife and I moved to Hoover 2 years ago from Bessemer for the schools. We have a 9-month-old, and I have my wife will be having another child in about 8 months. And the whole reason we bought this house that we bought on O'Neill Drive was for the school district. And so it's very disheartening for me to see that I just purchased a house, and now I'm already considering what I'm going to do. We've talked a lot tonight, and I've heard this multiple times, about how we can't cherry pick people. So then why are we cherry picking 2 streets out of Bluff Park and sending them to a different school that's not even the closest, it's not the second closest, and it's not the third closest school, it's actually the 4th farthest away school. Bluff Park is 1.1 miles from my house. The Green Valley School is almost 5 miles from my house. You have Glen, and you also have Shades Mountain that are all closer. So there's no way, looking at that map up there, and you have this one little cherry-picked street. It just makes no sense to me. We brought up capacity multiple times, and it's been mentioned by the 2 people before me on this side that the Bluff Park Elementary will be seeing nothing but a drop in population. You have the 4th and 5th graders, which are the 2 largest grades, they're graduating. The people that were pulling out, the majority of them are 1st graders, which is the smallest class in Bluff Park. Makes no sense to do that when it's already going to shrink as a school, to move people. And I could ramble on, but I'm not going to. So in closing, I can't believe that there can be any argument made for rezoning 2 streets that are 1.1 miles from a school to a school that's 4 times that distance away. Thank you.
If there are any people here that can come Monday, I know you want to hear all of them, but if they could drop out of the line, if there are any people that are going to come to the microphone with repetitive points, we don't, out of respect for time, I think we ought to avoid repetition. But I think if they can come Monday, please let them do that. Those who can't, please speak to them.
Mr. Sweeney, your time's up.
My name is Bricker Daltrey. I am a resident of Chapel Creek. I have 2 students at Glen now and a 3rd enrolling in kindergarten next year. We are unaffected by the change in our house and in our neighborhood. The thing I'm disappointed with the maps and this proposal is the short-sightedness. The elephant in the room is peach colored on the high school board and the capacity of Hoover High School. And I would like to see a longer term plan addressing the unitary status issues, addressing the capacity issues at Hoover High School, so my children don't have to live through this again.
Obviously, one of the things that we desire too is a long shelf life. We do, however, as a board, the superintendent recognizes our need for relief at the secondary level, and we're being very thoughtful about how we proceed with that. But thank you.
I have some other points, but I'm going to pass them up from our neighborhood, Chapel Creek.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Mary Leach. I am a real estate agent with Realty South. I am and have been an on-site sales agent for the Preserve since 2002. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I will not take 3 minutes. The Preserve is a traditional neighborhood development. Part of that, I'm not going to bore you with the full details of what that entails, but part of that is that it's walkable. It is walkable to the stores, it's walkable to the schools. And the Preserve Parkway, the main road through the neighborhood, dead ends to Gwynn Elementary School, which is the neighborhood, the school for our neighborhood. The term nationally recognized Gwynn Elementary School is actually printed on my collateral material that I hand out. The location of this school is very valuable to me as a real estate agent and selling homes in the Preserve. In fact, these parents here purchased their homes, it is a fact, because of that school system. The people thank you for allowing me this time.
I'm parent of child at Trace Elementary. And our November meeting, I mentioned a list of items that I thought would make a successful process, and some of them have been met, some are not. I'm going to thank you very much for the ones that have been worked. But what we talked about the natural tension of community schools versus a diverse population in each school that reflects the city's diversity as a whole. I'd like to point out that is part of our problem. The past leaders of our city did a horrible job of annexation and cherry picking, and we're facing the results of it today. We can't develop a reasonable plan of people attending when you have a city that's spread out like junk on that map. So I'm very disappointed by what's happening and the problems we're facing. The school-age population is even more diverse than our city. So we know that we have these issues in trying to make sure that all of our schools are diverse. And while some people portray this as not desiring or wanting that, we do want that. Most all of us want both diversity within racial characteristics and economic characteristics. In fact, it works better when poverty is not increased in any particular school. And unfortunately, we see that happening to Gwynn. And from past experience with Trace, which has weathered a downturn but is up on the upswing, we saw what happened. So please be very careful in your planning to make sure that we have proactive things. If this goes through the way it is, we're going to need proactive support for Gwynn so that the increase in poverty, and in Green Valley, so the increase in poverty doesn't negatively affect those schools. I would also like to say that one of the things that is lacking is the level of data, the level of detail in which the data is provided is insufficient for us to judge the effectiveness of the plans. We do know that Hispanic is not a race, but just if we come to get unitary status by satisfying the LDF, we could be facing on the National Council of Raza in 5 years, challenging our unitary status. So we would like to see some data that helps identify Black, white, and Hispanic, whether they identify as Black Hispanic or white Hispanic. That would be very helpful to maintain a good picture of the diversity of our schools, which we do value. Thank you for the time. Specifically, the level of data should be at a level at which neighborhoods are grouped so that each part that is considered independently should be able to be cut and pasted back and forth so we can make our own proposals.
I'm Kevin Speed. I live in Crest Cove. I'm a parent. I have a 6-year-old daughter at Bluff Park. I'm also the president of the Crest Cove Homeowners Association. I'd like to echo all of Emilio's points, and we stand in unison with our friends on O'Neill, Stonehenge, Stonebrook, and Page Drives and roads. I'd like to take the travel issue from the Crest Cove perspective. We would have one family that now would have kids at 3 schools instead of 2. One has kids would be grandfathered in at Bluff Park, would have kids at Simmons, and also kids at Gwen. And in my case, I would have to decide which parking lot I would want to enter to get downtown to work. Because now I can draw myself at Bluff Park, get on Valley, get on Alford, get on 65. Now I have to go into Gwen, I have to decide, do I go 31, enter that parking lot, or do I go and fight all the over mountain traffic to get down to 65 that way? So be faced with that decision. Also, we only have 5 kids affected currently by this. And as Emilio stated earlier, why is it necessary to move 5 kids? And then in the grand scheme of things, how does that impact this whole scenario? And lastly, naturally, we have a petition, and it's not long, and I'll end with this. Whereas the Crest Cove neighborhood of 33 homes was founded in 1994 and has been zoned for Bluff Park Elementary School since its inception, it's now being considered for rezoning to Gwen. And whereas our neighborhood has been extremely active in Bluff Park Elementary School throughout its history, with numerous room moms, PTO members, and leaders, and widespread attendance and support for school events, and whereas the current rezoning proposal impacts only 5 children, which will have no bearing on the overall numbers at Bluff Park or Gwen, and whereas the Crest Cove neighborhood is mainly made up of families with older children or retirees, and therefore the future stress on Bluff Park or Gwen will be limited, and whereas the proposed change to Gwen will adversely affect multiple families for years to come, whereas the owners in the Crest Cove Homeowners Association hereby affix their signatures requesting the school board to reconsider the rezoning of the Crest Cove neighborhood so that current and future children can remain a part of the Bluff Park Elementary family. Signed, 32 of our 33 members. If I can turn this in.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amy Page. I live in Lake Crest. My children are obviously zoned to Gwen. I am a parent. My children, I have a 3rd grader and a 4th grader. We are not in our home actively impacted by this change, but we are 100% impacted in our school. Our children's friends are leaving, our school will be changed, and that is an impact I think that needs to be considered with the children that are remaining in the school. Is that is a change for them as well. Is that this is an adjustment and an emotional situation for all children in Hoover, not just the children that are being rezoned. I want to start by saying I do not envy your position. I really don't. I think you've walked into a bad mess, and I hope that you can hear that there is passion and there is a lot of parents of the children and where we're coming from. I'm going to look at this from something that I've not heard. I'm looking at this from a classroom standpoint, kind of a boots on ground situation. I pulled the National Assessment for Educational Progress numbers, the most recent 2015 release. As anybody who's been following that, Alabama does not ever seem to climb very high nationally. That is a concern, I would think, among all of us. Where I think that really comes into play is that with Gwen, under the new plan, Gwen's poverty rate raises to about a 40% level. What that really means, if you put it in a classroom standpoint, is my fourth grader currently has 24 students in his class. Okay? When you're looking, at a 40% poverty rate, you're looking at 10 children living in a low-income situation. When you take the National Assessments records and you look at the way that they figure some of their scores when they've looked at all of the assessments, they figure, they talk about basic and below basic ratings on scores. And they look at that, and what that basically means is if you hit a basic rating, that means that you lack partial skills to function on a grade level. So if you walk into math, you're missing at least partial of your requirements to walk in the door. And below basic means that you lack all requirements that needed to perform on a grade level. Under that, in fourth grade, in the math, my child's in the fourth grade, to look at a fourth grade class, out of those 10 children, 49% are running at basic ratings in Alabama right now as we stand, with 25% below basic, which means that in a fourth grade math class under this new plan, 75% of those that are moved, which is 7 children, okay, are going to either lack all or partial requirements to function on a grade level. Okay, so we're bringing that into the classroom. When you add to that the fact, and I'm a special ed teacher, so bear with me here, we have disabilities in our school as we should, and we support them beautifully. Gwen is a family if you've not ever spent any time there. And we have a host of things, and you have this in our classrooms. We have intellectual disabilities in our classroom. Like Jessica.
Could you summarize pretty quickly?
Yes, I'm working on it. I promise. I'm getting there. We have intellectual disabilities. We have various types of learning disabilities. We have behavioral disorders. We also have English as second language in all of our classrooms. This brings that we need additional supports. We need boots on ground in all these classrooms to put this into place. The tax on these teachers that's going to come next year is going to be tremendous. And the attrition rate, it is, especially at North Park as well. And the attrition rate for Alabama is not, I left my other paper at home. I looked at the attrition rate for last year, and it cost Alabama close to $20 million, the low estimate was $20 million across the state, just for attrition rate, with the majority of the teachers leaving because they were functioning in low poverty schools. We have a fantastic set of teachers at Gwen. We've been there for 5 years, and I've got 2 more. If this goes through, I need to know what are the supports you're going to put into place. We're going to need additional supports for each grade. This needs to happen for this to happen for the teachers.
So much, and we are giving great thought and consideration once we have a final plan as to what that support would look like for those schools that are highest in poverty.
Good evening, Dr. Murphy and everyone. My name is Stephen Peng, and I live in Page Drive, and I'm a friend of Charles and William, who are a 5th and 3rd grader in La Park Elementary. And I share a lot of thoughts with my neighbors and every speakers. And the point I want to make is that when we make some decisions, we need to keep the children's interest in mind, and that is the first determinant for any decisions, I think, not anything else. So I would bring 2 major points, and that is first is the psychological impact on the children when they move to another school. As I talk about rezoning few days ago, my two kids get up very upset, and they get stressed and somehow catch a cold. And my kids cannot go to sleep very well, and during the night they come to my door and ask me to sleep with him, and so I catch the cold from my kid. Excuse me for my voice. So I think there is a lot of stress on these kids because they are currently in Block Elementary, and perhaps only one in every class will be moved, and they will ask the question why they are picked. Right? We live very close to Block Elementary, only 2 miles, 5 minutes drive, without any traffic. And on Monday, present day, I drive my car and from my home to Green Valley, and it takes 15 minutes. And because Monday is a holiday, the traffic is light. But there are 5 traffic lights, 5 sets of traffic lights have stopped there. So I think that from this point, we increase the traffic risk maybe by 5 times. And the other thing is that when the kids are moving to the new place and they don't have a lot of friends. And we also, you heard from my neighbors, Black Park Elementary actually is in a community which is very stable. And the class size is not increasing very much. And we don't think we have any reason like to just pick the maybe 16, 15 students out. And just by everyone, that saves 10 minutes a day. And 1 year will be 180 school days. And the time we save for each student, if we don't move, just don't move, will be about 20 days of sleeping time if we just use that time for sleeping. So if you don't move them, they will be panicked. If you move them, they will be at risk of traffic risk and also psychological influence. And I work at UEB and I get in contact with a lot of physicians. I asked them what is the decision that they in their mind to treat patients. And the first thing they think is that do no harm. If you make any decision, make any treatment, you want to make those patients better, not worse, not harm. So I think by no action from your side, these kids in our street, O'Neill Drive and Pitt Drive, they will save a lot of psychological risk and traffic risk. Thank you.
My name is Sarah Morgan. I have a 7th grade daughter at Simmons Middle School. We live in the Chapel Hill neighborhood, and she is going to be one of the few students at Simmons that will be put on a completely different feeder track or whatever it's called. She's going to be going to Berry and Spain Park now. And I just want to state for the record, I'm officially unhappy about that. Children that are preschool age, I'm not worried about what elementary schools are going to be going to. I'm sure they're all fine and dandy. We loved Green Valley. But to pluck a 13-year-old from relationships that she's cultivated since kindergarten and nobody else she knows is going to be with her on that. I hope that will be taken into special consideration, her age, and it's very traumatic. And I just have a couple of questions about grandfathering. Is that something that I can count on, the fact that she's going to be entering 8th grade Is that a definite yes, you will be able to be grandfathered in to Simmons, because that will be her last year there?
She is an 8th grader
She's
currently.
a 7th grader currently.
She's a 7th
Next year she'll be
grader.
an 8th grader.
So she is grandfathered for the 1 year.
Okay, are there any options that buys me a year? Is there anything that can be done for her to not have to go to Spain Park after that? Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's just, for a 13-year-old
The
girl.
grandfathering side of the conversation, the grandfathering side is a 1 year piece.
So are y'all going to offer like a tuition option or anything like that?
No. No. But, again, let's get the plan to unfold, and then I'm sure there'll be conversations that others will want to have with us too. But the grandfathering is 1 year.
And that is for sure happening? The
Grandfathering, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Hi, my name is Sharon Harrison, and I have a child at Buck Park, and I have a child at Simmons. And I also live on Page Drive, that's in Buck Park for over 30 years. And I want to echo what my neighbors have said regarding the distance. And I also want to point out that we feel that, and I say this for all of the Hoover City schools, I think, that most people consider themselves in a community-based school if you live less than 2 miles from the school. And I don't know if other people feel that way. And as I quote, we don't want to lift students out of their community and send them some distance away. That's what. I guess 1.6 miles to nearly 5 miles seems counterproductive to your goals, in my opinion. So I'm here to advocate for my street. Thank you. So my question is, I did have a question, but I cut out so much because so many other people said what I wanted to say. But my question is, who is going to protect us, people who feel like we live in a community-based school and are being bussed out of our neighborhoods?
Trent Hauser, live in Highland Crest. Gwen parent, and Simmons parent. Two children in Gwen and one in Simmons. I've been in Hoover for over 21 years. Way back in the 90s, even though I didn't have children at the time, I voted for the tax increase with all that money was to go to the schools. Of course, I didn't realize that our city council and mayor would rob that money years later. I'm coming back to that. So Gwen is we live in Highland Crest. Gwen is our community school. Pinewood, Birch Tree, the Preserve, Highland Crest. Gwen is our school. It's our community. That's where we request that we go to school. To address the contiguous zoning, Gwen is not, that yellow zone up there may be contiguous by the letter of the definition, but not the spirit. You cannot, it's really 3 separate areas. One, Lake Crest is connected by a high voltage power line. That's the only way that you have a contiguous. Sorry, Crest Cove, but the reason why you have to come to Gwen is because you're at the end of the high voltage power line. That's the only way. So if you don't come, Lake Crest can come. It makes a lot more sense. The only way you can drive from the west side of the school zone and get to Gwen is to go by Highland Crest, through the Preserve, through Birch Tree. That needs to be done. Grandfathering. Most of us have multiple kids. To have one kid grandfathered without the other, younger siblings need to be grandfathered. Except one. As far as the academic excellence, this plan does not address that. We're increasing disparity, and and to come to a plan without how are you going to direct? Well, we'll deal with that later when we finally get a plan. No, you come with a plan and you discuss how you're going to address the academic excellence. This, I mean, to go from the poverty rates and the minority and all that, it's really, I mean, we know what happened to Trace Crossings and why that happened, and you're going to do it to other schools? Makes no sense. Simmons capacity at 62%. Does anybody believe that? No. I mean, how many empty classrooms are in Simmons right now? How many? Do you have 1,100 lockers at Simmons? Can the lunchroom accommodate 1,100 students without having lunch starting at 10 and ending at 2? Really? I mean, that's not viable. So,
Dr. Murphy, it's 8 o'clock.
We volunteered at Gwynn for over 12 years. I think I deserve more than 3 minutes. So my questions. Can Simmons really absorb 300 students? Why unitary status? Why? We've never had it. We've had high quality. Did you ask the parents if they want unitary status? Seems like we're going through a lot of pain, a lot of discomfort for something the parents don't really even know what it means or probably don't even want it. We just want good quality, high quality schools with good diversity. I don't care. I mean, I don't mind that somebody's monitoring us and making sure we're meeting the needs of our diverse community. How much money are we spending on legal fees and consulting fees to get this unitary status? And if you divide that by the schools, how much would that each school have gotten to improve their academic excellence instead of worrying about some legal crap? And I know you've mentioned you don't want to delay, and I understand, it's going to be painful whenever, but you and Andy Craig have done your job. You've gotten our attention as citizens. An election is coming up in August. There's probably going to be huge changes in city council and the mayor. And would your rezoning plan change if you knew you were going to have $5, $6, $7 million extra a year in school budget? I think that is reason enough to delay this at least until after the August elections.
Ben Smith, Chapel Creek, son goes to Wayne. I'll keep it simple. So you've got, I think, 2 councilmen here. Is there a third, or do you already leave? 2 gentlemen right here? 3? Okay, cool. There's something up there before.
Mr. Gene Smith has joined us. Thank you, Mr.
Excellent.
Smith.
Thank you, sir. I guess the other gentleman left. Do you need more money from the city? Will you say it publicly? Because you kind of didn't answer a question before, meeting resources. You said city. It was an odd answer. I'd just like to know, do you need more money?
Our school district has been very clear about where we are in terms of our budgets and our needs. And so to be extremely definitive, in order for us to continue to be Hoover, have the opportunities for our children that I believe we want to have the classroom sizes that we have become accustomed to and would like to continue, we absolutely need additional support.
City representatives that are here a question?
They're not on the agenda. So.
I'll ask, what do we need to do to help the schools get more money? Do you need money from us? I mean, I'll put my money where my mouth is.
I have spoken with Dr. Murphy and board members on numerous occasions. We understand that they need some help, but they have yet to give us any type of a dollar figure. None.
Okay. Ma'am, can you make that possible?
I really don't want this to turn into let's cast aspersions at all. That's not my nature. But I have been very clear in many forums with many individuals that the school district needs more money. Now, to say to me, do you need $2 million, $5 million, $9 million? We need money to sustain the school district to remain Hoover. But,
Let's be better than Hoover.
I'm sorry?
Let's be better than Hoover. Like give me a pound book.
I'll take exception. If somebody needs me to give them a number, I need 12 million additional a year. So.
12 million, Mr. Smith, 12 million. Did you hear that?
I don't mean to put you together in some indirect way to your bosses, but it's something the community needs to understand. So if you had more money, knew it was coming, things you mentioned, magnet schools, I read a lot about how magnet schools help. It puts the decision in the parents of displacing their children for academic, other opportunities. If that money was available, would you propose potentially something different or a hybrid solution with additional magnet programs and things of that nature?
Well, and please understand, I do not want to be adversarial. I think
I'm not understanding.
So let me respond to that in this way. It is absolutely critically important that this school district join hands with this city to find all the ways we can to provide the very best education for all of our children. And I'm willing to do that and have been willing to do that. And I really don't want to be pitched against these guys because I think a collaborative relationship is in order. So, gentlemen, we won't find the parking lot, right? I want to be very clear about something. We're mixing a little bit apples and oranges at this point because the charge that we have as a school district, the charge that I have as your superintendent is to make sure that this school district is compliant with the obligations of the court. And in order to be compliant with the obligations of the court, and frankly, our desire to be focused on all children, it's not a money conversation in totality, although to respond to your question I have, but this is a matter now that is a legal matter, it's a desegregation court order, and we have an obligation as a school district. If indeed we want to come out from under the desegregation court order, we must meet the obligations of the court. My concern is this: in the absence of us doing so, we can either stay at the table, try to find a plan that's palatable to all of us, or we may lose our place at the table and have someone design a rezoning plan for us, and then none of us be happy at the end because none of us are going to get all of what we want. And I've been pretty clear about that. So this is, I hear your conversation about budgets. I want to bring us back to, this is a desegregation court order. There is pending litigation. The school district has some obligations to the court for which we cannot thumb our nose.
So I guess the reason I asked about the budget is I understand some of these alternative methods may cost. It's cheap to reshuffle, and that's what we're doing. So if, I guess I don't pin you against them, but would the city entertain an alternate hybrid that they may not have, the school board may not have even considered because funds aren't available to see something? I don't know how if you know all you have is this much money, how do you have to work with it. If someone says, hey, can you come up with a better solution? And we need to give you money, you might have a whole other idea. So how do we foster that kind of innovation?
We will continue conversation.
All I can say is the council has always, since I've been on the council the last 6 years, worked with the school board in any way that they've asked us to work with them, and we've reached out, and they've reached out to us. And we work together. And we're not going to get an adversarial relationship with them, because the school board is the school board, the council is the council, and they're two entities. But we do work together, we look forward to working together, and we appreciate you bringing up what you did tonight.
Because you are our city, both of you, all of you. So we
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
So,
Thank
and can you just add some more data to the website about maybe ESL impacts and special need impacts? Because those take funds and human resources to, I'm kind of curious what the impact
Dr.
is.
Mayor can help us with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will. Hi.
My name's Doug Cole. I live in the purple enclave in between the two yellows. I only say that to make the point that we were trying to do away with enclaves, and we seem to have created them. I'm going to keep this quick because the young lady behind me is an apartment dweller that we keep talking about, and so I want to give her some time to ask her question. The one question I do have, because all the others have been answered, is will the final plan be released to the public prior to a vote by the school board? So whatever final plan we come up with, will it be released to the public before the school board votes on it?
I would have no problems with that. So once the Department of Justice, Legal Defense Fund, and the school district reaches some agreement in concept or whatever that would look like, I have no problems with us sharing that plan.
With ample time, of course, for us to contact our...
I don't know your definition of ample time because
Give me a week.
remember that it is the intention to take that proposed plan to our board on March the 7th.
Just don't release it and then vote on it 24 hours later. So give us a week to look at it and let us, contact our...
There will very likely, just complete transparency, we'll look at the calendar, but I can't promise you that that's a week. I'll promise you it's not going to be a few hours dropped on you. But hopefully the plan we come back with, again, is not going to make everybody happy, but I'm hoping that we can come back with a plan that satisfies a number of concerns that we're hearing. That's my hope.
One last selfish comment. I do live in the preserve. I have 2 children at Gwynn, and they walk home every day from school. So just want to make that point.
Okay, so my name is Dina. I'm not exactly related to all of this. My son go to Trace. I missed the meeting, so I'm here to speak now. I'm glad you brought it up again about this being about desegregation, and there are some people at this meeting and other meetings that touched on it, but I want to speak on it, being a person, just being black. I've said this at other meetings before. We're all one race people. It's the human race. It don't make me different from you, Dr. Murphy. It's just the human race. That's it. We talk about these multi-dwelling, it makes it seem so negative. It's an apartment. It's just like a condo or a townhouse. I feel like just going back to the original proposal from September 8th, 2014, when I read that proposal online, I knew exactly what it was saying. And if any of you read that proposal, you knew whether it was straightforward or subconscious, however, that basically it was centered around Trace Cross just saying that, well, we're in this, what should I call it, just pre-planned neighborhood. Yes, my son goes to Trace Crossings, and their community is predominantly white. The apartment that I live in is predominantly black and Hispanic. I didn't know that when I moved, and no one gave me a memo and say, hey, you black, come with me. But when I read that proposal, as soon as I started, it just hit me. They tell me, hey, our neighborhood is predominantly white. We want our school to reflect that. It's too many black students here. And that hurt. This is 2016. I'm young, I'm very young. That should be something of the past. It shouldn't be anything that ever happened in this world, period. But that should be past for me, especially for my son. He's 8 years old. I had to tell him, honey, you probably gonna have to go to another school. And he asked me, well, why? I'm not one to lie. And I have to prepare him for things like this. I told him, because it's some people who don't necessarily like you or accept you because of your skin color. The hardest thing is some people have to talk with your kids is about the birds and the bees. But being a black mother, I have to say that about sex and everything, but also tell him how it's going to Trace, living in an apartment, being black, the fact that he's poor, like everyone is saying, well, we give these apartment people and the poverty, it doesn't equal poverty. Okay, these apartments aren't cheap around here. Please look at it. It costs a lot of money to live in these apartments. And it does not equal uneducated, like I said. It does not mean that he can't learn or that he came from a low performing school or a low performing neighborhood. I didn't move to Hoover for that. I moved from Alabama, living in one of the top neighborhoods there. I moved here because, you know, Hoover just got things going on and stuff like that. But when I moved here, he was 3, and I said, well, if I'm not going before it's time to register him, then I'm not going anywhere. I don't want my son to jump from school to school. I went to the same elementary school, but I went to 3 different middle schools and 2 different high schools. Not because I'm bad or got kicked out or because I moved a lot. It's just, that's how it happened. Private schools and stuff. And to be honest, I wish that wouldn't have happened. All those people I went to school with, I see now are still best friends. I'm not friends with anyone I went to school with. It's not because I'm not a good person. It's just hard to make those relationships when you're not with them all the way through. And that's, my son is shy, he's an introvert, he's not as social and out there as other children. And this is going to be hard for him, and it's going to be hard for all the other kids. I put in plenty of time and volunteering at Trace. I feel like they should have been paying me for all that volunteer work I done. But he deserves to be there just as much as the Trace Crossing neighborhood. And without that, our community, it's going to be a predominantly white school. And it looks like for these, it's just switching blacks from this school to that school, and it just doesn't make any sense. And I don't think anyone really wants this to happen. Don't you stand up. And let's get over this, okay?
And really, trying to get over that is exactly what getting past this unitary status is about. Because we are in 2016. This is a 1965 desegregation court order, and we just, at least as I understand it, if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected, it is just my understanding that our current judge is not going to allow this thing to continue to sit out there. So a green factor to unitary status is student rezoning. We're trying to own that, as difficult as it is and as painful as it is. But that is part of the process for us to move forward, is to do the rezoning. So thank you for sharing, though. I appreciate it.
Okay, I got some of my cutoff, and I'm leaving.
Thank you for letting me cut you off. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Marjorie, and I live at Tree Line Court Apartments. My daughter goes to Gwen Elementary School. She's 6. She's in the 1st grade, and she's been rezoned to Green Valley. I was wondering why you're just flip-flopping the apartments. I was going to say everything she said, but since she said it, I'll just ask my question. Why are you just changing one apartment complex and moving it to the other school and vice versa? Because the very first lady asked that, but you didn't answer.
I wouldn't necessarily suggest that we're trying to flip-flop. We're looking
No, that's what you did. That's what it said. That's what it is right now. So it's not said. That's what it is right now.
As we are sitting at the table, trying to make sure that we're meeting all the criteria, the obligations, and the expectations, this is how this plan was crafted. So I hear your concern, and it looks like, feels like, and according to you, is flip-flopping. But again, I know I'm sort of wearing the thought out. But this is not a final plan. I'm hoping that we can give further thought and consideration. But thank you for your observation and my correction.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Matthew Allen. I live in Hoover. No matter where I live in Hoover. But I do live in Chapel Creek Estates, which is zoned for the land. My child is a kindergarten. He won't be rezoned, but that it still affects his school. Lots of things have been said tonight that I echo. it is disheartening to see some of the back and forth between neighborhoods in town, and you know, you see some of those cleaves come out between certain areas of town, but I do love living here. I moved here 11 years ago to marry my wife, who went to Hoover High School and is a native here. So, but I'm here to present signatures from people in our neighborhood who wish to see our school stay as it is. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. We'll take it.
Hi, Dr. Murphy. Again, I'm Sean Matthews. I spoke the other night. And I just have some additional information that I've come across since the last meeting, and for the rest of y'all that live in Scout Creek neighborhood. Some of our children, because we don't have a bus in our neighborhood and we drive our kids to school in the morning, if we're working parents, we have our children picked up by after-school care or they stay at extended day. I spoke with my after-school daycare director, and it so happens that she's affected by the apartments on the east side of Hoover, and she's very disappointed that her child may not be able to go to River Chase. So that will impact her directly. In addition, she said, for our facility, when my child goes after school, they will have to pick up an extra bus, because right now the bus leaves Trace, it goes to South Shades Crest Elementary, it picks up those kids, and then it goes over to Deer Valley and picks up some additional kids. Those buses can only hold 14 students. They currently have 18 students enrolled at their facility for after-school services. So they will have to not only pick up an extra bus, which is a cost to the facility, but they will also have to split the load so that those children can fit onto that bus, which is going to mean that my child may, depending on if she's on first or second load, 2:45, she will not get picked up like she does today. She'll have to wait so that bus can unload and come back to Trace to pick her up, which is going to be about 3:15. The second thing that she mentioned to me is that she will have to hire another teacher, because they usually pull a classroom teacher to pick up what they call the big kids, to pick up the big kids and bring them to the facility until we get there. So that's what I wanted to say about that. The second question comes from my neighbors in Trace that could not be here, or they apologize, they had some conflicts, but we're all talking, and we want to follow up on the STEAM question about the STEAM lab. And the question is how is the STEAM program at Trace funded, and what are the plans to fund those at Rocks Gap and at South Shades Crest? And the second question that I added to that is Trace Crossings the only school that has the STEAM lab? Because we do want an equal opportunity education for all of our students, not just the students at Trace. Thank you.
I might have Ron talk about that, but I believe our STEAM is in some measure supported with some federal funds.
Not aware of federal funds, I think they did get some small grants. To help, but it was primarily fundraising at the school. There was STEAM, the program there is, that is not a new concept necessarily. Integrated content, STEM, arts, everybody is looking for different creative ways to bring that together with an applied emphasis on kids doing things, making things. So I think if you talk to any of our principals in the room tonight, you would hear them talking about makerspace or STEAM or some variant thereof that they either have in place. It may not look like the room at Trace, but they've all taken notice of what Trace Crossings has done with that room and in that space. I love it when I'm in there, when I see the kids doing what they're doing in there. I also love it when I'm in the new science lab at River Chase and I see what the kids are doing in there. Some of it's very similar, some of it's very different. So seeing how our different schools are taking advantage of those opportunities, identifying those resources and putting it in place, it's powerful learning, whatever name you put on it.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Hertz. I have 2 kids in Bluff Park, Illinois. As a parent, I have serious questions about the obtaining of unitary status. For the last 12 years, Hoover City Schools seems to have always found itself in the crossfire of some of the political games that take place in Hoover. 12 years ago, it was widely held that the City Council orchestrated the firing of then Superintendent Dr. Williams. Some of the court documents that have come out in the last weeks and months paint a pretty clear picture of the way things were run under Andy Craig. grade. And I believe that without the oversight of the Department of Justice, many of those games would still be played today. If we obtain unitary status, and we have, after you retire or go on to take another job, and we lose your strong leadership, without a strong leader of the superintendent position, and without the oversight of the Department of Justice, what reassurance can you provide to us that the political games won't return to the Hoover City Schools?
I can only speak for the fact that I am 30 and have about 25 years more to go. You know, obviously you're asking a question for which I don't really have significant historical basis. I really don't want to cast aspersions on any former superintendents or question how they led.
The point I was trying to make is that while I understand unitary status wasn't necessarily set up for me, or the oversight of the Department of Justice isn't necessarily there for me as a parent, I do find some comfort in having oversight from an outside source, albeit the federal government.
They might be happy to stay a part of the process then.
Do we have that choice?
As far as clearing unitary status, that allows our school district to be able to make decisions. But I guess, Stephen, my position would be a little bit more of what a passionate community, what a group of people who have an expectation for accountability. And I think you all have a voice and you're using it. And I just, I would question whether this community would let nonsense go on or not.
They did for 12 years.
Thank you.
I'm awfully short, so I don't know if I can. But anyway, I did not come here with prepared speech or even expected to stand in this line. From what I can tell, it's a very small representation of Hispanic people, and I am officially, I guess, exactly. Obviously, there's someone right after me, but that's not a term I normally even use a lot because, honestly speaking, I'm obviously Hispanic. Not many other Hispanics are here, but I've grown up in Hoover and lived here since 1974, so, I'm dating myself here age-wise, but I've heard a lot of the comments that people have made, and I just felt the need to come up here and support my school, Gwen. My daughter goes to Gwen, and I'm just astounded and really distressed by the fact that I hear that our poverty level is going to go up to 40%. And obviously, as you already mentioned, this whole community is impassioned. Obviously, Hoover residents, have a lot of different concerns, and this switching up of children from one school to the next. I came up here thinking, okay, not a lot of Spanish people have come up here, and when I fill out a form, I don't know, maybe I need to do this better, but I'll put Hispanic white. My daughter looks very white. Most people don't think of her as Spanish, but I'm very upset by what seems like such a simple issue. How we would go through the trouble of transferring all these children from one school to the next when it's obvious so many of these communities, be it Green Valley, be it Bluff Park, Gwynn Elementary, we're all happy with the diversity we have in our own schools. To take one school and as so many parents have already said, change anxiety, different kids deal with anxiety, different kids deal with all these different pressures, and then have their big brother or sister or little brother or sister go to a different school, and I'm not even dealing with that. I personally, my daughter will not be affected by the changes. She is an only child. She will not be affected by grandfather clause or little siblings, but my heart breaks for all her friends and for the community that we have at Gwynn, I can only speak for Gwynn specifically, the community we have at Gwynn is outstanding. We've been there for 5 years. You know, we're looking forward to going through to Simmons, but I just cannot understand the reasoning behind this and why we would uproot so many families and disrupt so much just to answer some unitary status for, you know, making sure that we have the right percentages at every school when it's obvious and has already been stated by the people at Gwynn. Our school is very representative of what this country is, you know, and it just doesn't make sense. I'm sorry. That's all I was going to say.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Buenas noches. And I'm a U.S. citizen in search of a race category. My daughter goes to Gwynn School, and we moved our daughter from private school into Gwynn. And I can say that Gwynn has been really great to us. I mean, the principals, the teachers, it's a great school. My question to you guys is, I keep thinking about cause and effect, you know. Cause and effect is basically the relationship between events, you know, one being the result of the other. So there's going to be a lot of reaction. Among this, I'm pretty sure some families are going to move, and some families are going to send their children to private school. What is your plan then? What are you going to do? I mean, Trace Cousins can be a perfect school, I think, you know. But a lot of people choose to send their children to private school. So do we have a contingency plan for this?
We could speculate all night what might happen and who might go and who might stay and who might go to private school. And frankly, with as busy as we are trying to pull this together, I don't have time to speculate through all that. I respect your point, but you know, I think the Hoover City schools are so great that regardless of what school a child is on, and I've said this in every meeting, that regardless of where a child goes into Hoover, what a great experience they're in for. Thank you. Well, I lied to you by 30 minutes. Thank you for hanging in with us. Thank you for sharing your concerns. And we appreciate very much your voice. We will have another meeting on Monday evening, Dr. White, at your school at Gwynn at 6 o'clock. And is that your cafeteria or your gym? In the gymnasium. Gwynn on Monday evening. Thank you so much.